Hello and welcome to More Than Footy, your official Sydney Swans podcast brought to you by Bing Lee. I'm your host, Tom Chadwick. Well, sadly, the men's program, our men's team, did not play finals in 2025, so really we turn our attention straight away to 2026 and try and get our players fit and healthy for that season. So it's time to welcome a couple of special guests, the first one being reconditioning specialist Bill Knowles. Bill, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And Damian Raper, many Swans fans would probably know Damo as our head of physiotherapy and medical services. Damo, welcome.
How are you, Tom?
Really good. Bill, I'm going to start with you. You've been into the club for a week or so. Tell us what you're doing here.
Opportunity to come in, look at some of the injured players, put in some ideas on reconditioning strategies that can help them right now, but also can help them into the future. And like I've done with some other clubs, it's an opportunity to work with the staff. I have a lot of different strategies sometimes, alternative strategies. And when I can educate the staff on those strategies, it works really, really well. Because now, one, I get to work with the athletes, two, coach the staff continue to train the athletes. And I think some of these concepts then help them long term.
And so you've been working with some of our players who didn't finish the season through injury. What type of rehab and reconditioning have you done with them since being here?
Well, that's a secret. No. So it is looking at their injury history and trying to figure out ways that we talk about accepting force into the ground. So they're going to land, accept the landing. They're going to produce force. They're going to jump. They're going to run. They're going to cut and pivot. And regardless of the injury, the timing and the quality of that action. So when the foot hits the ground, like kind of what's the position of the knee, the hip, the torso? And we know the sport is a chaotic environment, but outside of that chaotic environment, if we can train them to be in a better position, have the strength to support those positions, then it can transfer to that more chaotic environment and potentially just keep them a little bit more safe, but hopefully more robust throughout the year.
Damo, clearly you work with these players a lot more than Bill have. Talk us through some of the players that Bill is working with, and without going into too much war and peace, what we're trying to fix in their bodies.
Yeah, Tom, clearly we didn't have a great injury from a player availability perspective. So for us, it was about trying to identify a couple of those players this year who didn't have particularly good years and put in place some strategies, as Bill mentioned, to sort of help them become healthy long term. So first starting point for us was Joel Armadi. Joel suffered sort of 2 hamstring strains this year and then finished the end of the year with an adductor strain. Joel's also got a bit of a complex injury history in the past, and we've tried lots of different things with Joel. We've reached out to experts internally in Australia. And for us, it was a matter of trying something different. We knew Bill's work from people he worked with overseas, from athletes that have been across from the NRL, from the AFL, and then also overseas athletes that Bill had worked with, and he had really good success with reconditioning athletes and coming up with good strategies to how to make them more robust long term. So for us, it was a natural starting point to reach out to Bill and see whether he was available to come out here to Australia, and he's been really generous with his time to be able to come out here for 2 weeks. And then it was a matter of identifying who are some of the other players that we struggled with and how can we help them as well. So Tom Papley, despite having missed a couple of games with his stress fracture, had a problem with his ankle last year. We know Tom's got a history of hamstring strains as well. He's had some problems with his left knee. So Tom, similar to Joel, identified that we need to do something a little bit different with Tom, think outside of the box, think about how could we recondition him and get him to a position where he was able to absorb force better, able to load better through his body and learn new strategies. And then the other 2 players being Will Edwards and Logan McDonald. So both Will and Logan missed a lot of the season with ankle fractures from 2024 season. So Will late in the VFL season, and then Logan with his syndesmosis injury from the grand final. Both of them had surgeries, had some complications after their surgery. And even though they were getting healthy towards the back end of the year, we made a decision for them not to return to play, take a bit of a conservative approach, make sure that they were getting towards full health. And really we knew that these ankle injuries that they have, it takes time to get them to 100%. And what we wanted to do was make sure they get as close to 100% as possible, avoid them having any subsequent injuries down the track. So identifying with both of them what areas they could work.
And to be clear, this is obviously their off-season. We saw some photos last night of some of the boys over in Europe and enjoying their off-season. Bill, to you, how engaged are these 4 athletes from your experience? Do they want to be here? Are they really leaning into this rehab program?
That's a good term. They are leaning into it. I've had situations where it's mainly one-on-one, and so you can really hold on to their focus and their attention. I've had plenty of opportunities where it's me with two other athletes, and the two athletes work and feed on each other quite well. And oftentimes they're from different cultures, different sports. In this case with the four, it's working really well. They can actually feed on each other quite a bit, and they're actually really good pros in the sense that they're coaching each other. They're making good comments on each other, positive comments and so forth. They're helping each other out quite a bit. There's all different injury profiles a little, but they're making it a very engagement opportunity. I think if we mix things up quite a bit, then it's good. I know they're off season, so as long as things can be, for lack of a better phrase, things can be fun, but they're pros. Doesn't have to be fun. Do a really good job at what you're doing. But adding a little bit of fun and play in there helps a great deal.
I've noticed a little bit of stuff that you have been doing, a bit of stuff in the pool with a lot of water work, plus in the gym. Just tell some of our Swans fans and members a bit more of the intricate stuff that you've been working with our players.
Yeah, the pool is like an incredible opportunity to be in an offloaded situation. We can mimic many of the patterns that might happen on the field, but in a low load. And what happens is the pool decreases the threat of pain, the threat of loading like gravity puts on you, which can then, the anticipation of it might hurt when I do certain things. You don't have that anticipation in the water. So it strips all that away. So they actually can move quite confidently in the water, and we can become very effective to then transfer that into the gym. Equally in the gym, to the Swans' credit, they have a gymnastics floor. And so it's a sprung floor, it's soft, and it reduces the forces quite a bit. So this transition from the pool to this soft gymnastics floor for jumping and landing and hopping and rolling and doing different kinds of athletic movements, again, minimizes the forces and the load against their body, increases their confidence to load an ankle or a hamstring, and then slowly will transition onto the pitch. And so it's a really good blend in an activities that takes place, gradually increasing that load, increasing confidence with that load, and it's a really effective way.
Well, sadly, we can't keep you on at staff full-time because clearly you're not based in Sydney, but Damo, to you, how much have you learnt from Bill and how much has your team learnt from Bill? So some of the techniques and the strategies you can keep going forward and hopefully keep our players fit throughout the season.
Yeah, the short answer is plenty. Bill's got an amazing amount of experience, unbelievable coach. What we've seen from him this week is ability to get different movements and different shapes out of the athletes. The big challenge for us now, and we've been doing probably half an hour to an hour in the pool, followed by an hour and a half to 2 hours in the gym. The guys had some lunch, refresh, recharge, and then go again for the afternoon session, again 2 hours or so. So they've been really decent hits for the players, and just the four of them, a lot of one-to-one coaching or 1-to-4 coaching, myself and other staff around those sessions as well. So the challenge for us now is how do we fit that into the team environment when we've got 45 athletes back in, when football becomes a priority, when we need them on the pitch. So how do we drip feed elements of what we've been doing with Bill into the day-to-day program for both these individual athletes, but then the group as a whole to make them more resilient and more robust?
And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you know these players back to front probably more so than Bill. Has anyone surprised you? We know that Paps can be a little bit of a smart aleck every now and then, but has anyone surprised you with how much they've actually, like I said earlier, lent into the rehab here?
Yeah, look, they've all been fantastic. They've all, as Bill said, been incredibly engaged. We know Tom is a high energy sort of player. We see that on the field and with his celebrations, and he's probably been the most, aggressive you'd call it, with some of our trampoline work and our gymnastics work that
I can picture that.
Yeah, he's pretty keen to get a front flip in.
Mm-hmm.
Logan, he's a bit floppier. He's probably got a little bit more movement that he needs to control. So he's progressed really well. Will Edwards, a bit younger, a little bit less developed. So some of these strategies and movements have been newer for Will. So it's been a great learning opportunity for him. Joel, we know, fantastic runner. When he's up and running and healthy and sprinting, he's a beautiful athlete. He's a beautiful mover. So probably with Joel, the work that we've seen this week and last week with Bill is we've been able to identify some of the areas that he's particularly weak, some movements that he's not great at. So for Joel, we'll be able to really target that, and Joel's bought in it and really found value in it as well.
Bill, what's some of the obstacles that you face when you deal with professional athletes and trying to rebuild their body?
They become professional as they age. They become very specialized in their movement that's involved in their sport. And so what we often look at in these situations is to go generalized, go back to the foundations of good movement competencies and bending and squatting and pushing and pulling and jumping and landing, things that happen in all sport. Take some of the specificity of the movement required for their actual sport and just imagine them as being soccer players, rugby players, basketball players, whatever it might be. And so when you do that, you actually are asking them to behave and to an athlete that would do something normally outside of the competitive environment. So they actually have to position their bodies a little bit different. And so the older they are, the more that they are looking like they're always trying to play their sport. And one thing we do to build them more robust is to build a foundation of quality movements and put strength on those movements that they can sustain, not with a football in their hand. So we keep the footy out of their hand, ask them to do these kinds of things. So the limitations comes from them accepting the fact that I can show them videos of what a rugby player looks like, a soccer player looks like, an ice hockey, a ski racer, and they can just look at that and say, yeah, that looks a lot like how we would actually move in our sport as well when we don't have a ball in our hand. So that's what it is to get this stripped down to be like, it's okay. I'm not here to make you a better footballer. I'm here to make you a better football playing athlete.
And how much joy do you get out of when you see a real transition or a real improvement from the athlete?
Yeah, that's the fun part. That's what keeps you doing the job. So when you see a connection start to take place, an athlete says, hey, I need to bend my ankle a little bit further in a certain bending position or a lunging type position on the ground. And they just say, well, it just doesn't really go into that position. When in fact it does, they just haven't done it in a while. They don't know what it feels like. So as soon as the lights start turning on and they understand and recognize like, that's what it feels like to be in that space, actually, we call it pulling the athlete out of their injury. Injuries often, they shorten what an athlete feels that they can do because they're in a protection mode, even if they're playing. And slowly when they're not playing and we say strip footy away from them, just move like healthy moving athletes or re-educate that process. As soon as they start to feel it, they become much more athletic. So they're less trapped in their injury and they're more apt to express themselves athletically. Then we need to take that back and say, go be a footy player again, with possibly a new bandwidth or more tools in their toolbox that they can then express themselves on the pitch. And that can keep them a little bit healthier.
We've spoken so much about why you are here in Sydney, but let's talk about some social. What are you going to get up to while you're here in Sydney? Have you enjoyed the city since you've been here? Has Damo taken you out for dinner?
Interesting.
For the city?
Incredible. It's long days, right? And then you're pretty gassed at the end of the day and you just recharge. But on the weekend, I got to the women's game. So that was great. So super great atmosphere. 7,000. I know, they said that a few times. So that was a big deal. But yeah, enjoyed that. Stayed up high. Saw a lot of the families, saw people there enjoying themselves, saw all the people that really aren't just watching the game at all. So I went down to the bar and hung out at the bar right behind the goal. Yeah. Met some real good people there, but actually got to see it up close. Yeah. So it was fantastic.
Giving it a few white bays as well. Tom.
Yes, absolutely. Any thoughts of coming back during the men's season to see the results of your work at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in making back. There's plenty of opportunities to come back to Australia. There's teams that I have sent me athletes both in AFL and in rugby, and so if I'm in the country, they're happy to have me stop by. So there's tons of reasons to want to come back, and if I am in season, I would absolutely be watching the game.
Well, it's absolutely a fascinating chat and a really, I guess, fascinating insight into exactly how you guys work and rebuilding our athletes. Thanks for your time and thanks for your time in Sydney.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Lee, and Bingley is proud to be a sponsor of the More Than Footy podcast. Before I get bounced by Dad, don't miss our weekly Binger deals on now at Bingley. Go the Swannies!
Good one, Jasmine.
Thanks, Nana.